Imagine embarking on an unforgettable journey through the heart of Italy, where every turn is a new treasure and every moment is filled with beauty and culture. You start your adventure in Rome, the eternal city. Next, you venture into the rolling hills of Tuscany, where the air is perfumed with the scent of vineyards and olive grove. The journey continues to Venice, the floating city of canals and gondolas, after Five Earth and Milan. But your Italian adventure doesn't end on land. It's about to get even more extraordinary. A magical journey through Italy, topped off with a house music festival on Costa Cruise. Dance under the stars, relax in style, and discover exclusive performances on deck, all while sailing to some of the most beautiful destinations. There are 3 packages to choose from. Sailing dates are from September 24th through the 28th, 2025. Book yours now at festivaloncruise.com.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Heidi's house. This is your host, Queen Bee Heidi B. And in today's episode, our featured guest is DJ Purple. I'm so looking forward to know more about his house music journey. So, are you ready? Then let's go. So, here he is. DJ Purple is in the house. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
It's my pleasure, truly. How are you doing today?
Doing great. I'm in a house mood. So yeah, that's all I
Perfect.
can say.
That's a great mood to be in. All
Yeah.
right. So, as you know, Heidi's House podcast is a very short, little kind of snapshot kind of interview that gives an idea of each of our featured guests about their house music journey, about their profile in this house music scene, and to share about your house music stories as well. So, without further introduction, I'm gonna keep it very short and sweet and go to the first question, which goes, tell us a bit, who is DJ Purple?
Just a regular guy out of Chicago. I'm not I don't have the prototypical Chicago story when it comes to how I got started in DJing, because most of our heroes, they got started as teenagers. And in the 80s, house music was really centered around the teen parties.
Mm.
I got my start as an adult. I started collecting records when I was a teenager. My first memories of being exposed to the house music mixing thing was in 1984. We're celebrating 40 years of house music as a
Yeah,
genre.
yeah.
And it just so happens that in December of 1984, that's when I discovered music on the radio. WBMX was the radio station, and it was the Hot Mix 5 DJs on the radio.
Beautiful. That's the legendary thing. And I'm seeing in the background we have 40 years there.
Oh, yeah. So that's something a little different. If you zoom in real close, that's the logo for Atlantic Records out of New
Oh,
York.
yes.
And this poster is from 1988 that's when they celebrated 40 years of the record label.
Mhm,
But the intersection about this, which is really cool, do
mhm.
you remember the group 10 City?
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
their first releases were on this label.
Yeah, yes, yes,
So
yes, yes, yes. But the number 40, it's a beautiful magical number now
it is.
for us when it comes to the house music. So back to 1984, and you got your first house bug, biting you.
Yeah. It was the strangest thing because some of the music that I actually heard was a little strange, but the thing that really stuck to me was that all of these different records were kind of going in and out of each other. So everything sounded seamless. It was like
Mhm.
the music just went on nonstop for at
Yeah.
least a half an hour or so. And then I found out that that was house music that I was listening to. And
Yeah.
some of the early records were Frankie Knuckles, Marshall Jefferson, Jesse Saunders, Steve Sir Curly. And I started to learn the rotations on the radio as well, like when they were doing their mixes. They did them at all points of the day, just about every day of the week.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the thing. What I've heard from people being here and my guests, about those early days and how it was, and it really was the music for the youth, and it was very innovative at the time,
Mhm.
implementing also the new equipment of the time, and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes I wish I would have been, like a fly on the wall to see and experience it all, but I'm happy to have you here to share a little bit
Oh yeah.
more. So that was your first introduction to house music. Tell us a little bit more about your journey then. You went into DJing.
So the way that that actually happened, it's really crazy for me to think back on this. I always fancied myself as a DJ, but I just never had the proper equipment.
Mhm.
So when I was in high school, I did have this turntable system set up where it had three speeds. You had 33 RPM, you had 45 RPM, and you had the 78s. So you had to adjust between those.
Yeah.
And the system I had a knob where you can go in between radio and phono for the record player. So what I would do is just put the knob right in between. And so when I'm listening to the mixes on the radio, I had a few records already, and I would try to emulate what it would sound like to actually blend the records. So the record is playing while the mixes are playing through the radio side of it. But that was still not the proper way to have DJ equipment. It
Mhm.
was only years later, I'd say about 1993, I had already left Chicago. I had enlisted in the Air Force and I was down in Cocoa Beach, Florida, in
Mhm.
the dormitories, and this guy is selling his equipment.
Oh.
So I had already had a bunch of records that I had mail ordered from Chicago and New York. So I bought the equipment off of the guy. He had turntables, a mixer. He even had a couple of crates of records of his own,
Mhm.
sold them all to me. And that's how I taught myself how to actually blend using proper techniques, 1200 equipment.
Ah, but I have
Yeah.
to say that you really had it somehow, it was something in you that you wanted to, no matter what kind of gear you had, you found
Yeah.
a way to make it work for you. Sounds
Yeah.
like that. So then
Absolutely.
your DJing took on, and you started to do the gigs in several clubs. Can you tell a little bit about your DJing career? Where have you been, and
Oh,
how
yes.
how that started?
Where do I start?
I
Okay.
know, 30 30 decades, if I remember
Yes.
correctly.
So in 1993, when I got the equipment, I was still kind of shy about all this stuff. So I just practice and practice constantly working on my blends and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
1994, my first gig was actually a wedding reception kind of a thing where the person just wanted background music, no pressure to blend.
Mhm.
And I had even wanted to do a radio show at a college radio station right across the way.
Yeah.
But I had orders to transfer from my base in Cocoa Beach, Florida, all the way across the pond
Mhm.
to the UK.
Mhm.
And that's where life changed for me forever.
Ah.
I already knew that house music was immensely popular in the UK from way back in 1986 when this was on the news, on the local news, where London was really taking to it. So now I finally get a chance to get stationed over there. And it was just mind blowing just how much the people really, really appreciated the music.
Yeah.
Within weeks of arriving, like I arrived in July of 1994. In August, like I kid you not, about 3 weeks later, I started DJing at a local pub in a place called Peterborough.
Mhm.
Never heard of the place,
Mhm.
but they had a thriving scene. They had a record shop, they had clubs. The record shop was carrying records from New York,
Oh,
popular labels, Strictly Rhythm,
oh.
Nervous, Emotive. They had Chicago labels, Casual, Relief, Music Plant. And I saw Farley Jackmaster Funk. He's one of the Hot Mix Five. I saw
Oh,
him in Peterborough, played pubs and clubs in Peterborough. And then the next year, I moved to another base and then got entangled in the scene in Newmarket, which was just as vibrant. The amazing thing about this was that some of the smaller towns had just as much of a feel as London did.
mhm, mhm.
So I could just kind of travel around, do this spot or this spot over here or this spot over there, and just do my thing.
It sounds like you really, it's really amazing story if you think about it, that you landed to the spot where you kind of were covered, you had the access to the new latest releases, and you made your way very fast there into the scene and so on. So must have been amazing, uh, you know. Time there over there in UK. And I have to say also, I remember UK was also a big, truly a big influencer here, already in the end of 80s and beginning of 90s. All the DJs were here following, of course, radio stations, sending latest mixes, and hearing the latest releases. And uh, UK in Europe was kind of like how would you say, um, it was that place where people kind of got the latest trends, and they landed to all the way to Finland, little Finland here as well. And I also got exposed very early because of that UK connection. So you then changed the bases there and were touring across the UK. What happened
Yes.
after the UK time?
So this was a bittersweet moment for me when I think about this, and I do have to just kind of briefly share this story because it just kind of ties together
Mhm.
how funny things go. It was always a dream. It was just a wild dream, but we never really kind of thought too much of it. But there were two clubs in London that I always loved going to.
Mhm.
One was called Bar Rumba, and that was because of the Garage City parties that Bobby and Steve held down there.
Mhm.
Then Ministry of Sound was massive. The sound system was incredible. DJs were incredible. I saw Terry Hunter spin there.
Mhm.
DJ McIntosh was one of the residents. Amazing DJ. Well, I got the chance to play in both of those locations. I played at Garage City a few times for as an opening DJ, and then myself and another fellow GI, uh, his DJ name was K Farrell. We were the first military guys to play at Ministry of Sound. Ministry of Sound was in August of 2001. I had to relocate back to the States in September of 2001. So I finally got to play these dream clubs right before relocating back to the States. And so I had to just kind of start over, find new crowds. When I relocated back to Florida, it was interesting because where I was located, there wasn't really much of a scene, but I could still keep my ear to the ground for two reasons. One, I got a hold of this radio station in the UK, which was more of an online presence,
Yeah.
BBC Radio One Extra. So,
Oh.
and they had the shows where you can listen back, like replay up to 2 weeks after the show was done. So I could just log on the computer, listen to the shows, keep pace to what was going on in the UK
True.
and vicariously in the US. And then I was not too very far from the Winter Music Conference in Miami, so I could just kind of slide down there every year and just enjoy the parties. So that was an interesting time for the 4 years that I was there in Florida. But the best part that happened was later on, I'd say about 2005,
Mhm.
when I relocated to Utah.
All right.
You would be surprised. There was a thriving scene in Salt Lake City, Utah,
Ah, okay.
and I was part of that.
And you were part of that. We're going to go a little bit more there, but I have to say that I do understand the bittersweetness, like you mentioned, but then again, you did get your shot to play in both of those amazing clubs. So, nobody can ever take that away. And
That's right.
and when you have that spirit and you have that house bug in you, no matter where you are, you will find a way. You will find a way to do your thing.
That's it. That
No
is it.
limitations. No.
None.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Utah. I'm sure that, not only me, but our audience is very interested to know this part of your journey. So,
Yeah, so and again, it's funny how these things happen. So I'm in Florida, and I'm still keeping in touch with my buddy that I had just previously mentioned, Kay Farrell.
mhm,
He was still in Europe, and he was due to relocate back to the US. And I got word that he was going to the air base up in Utah called Hill Air Force Base. And the thing about it was that it was close enough to Salt Lake City. And we did some research, and they had a promotional night called I Love Ibiza.
ah,
And one of the DJs that came through Salt Lake City was Bobby and Steve.
wow.
I was like, wait, I know these guys. I
Yeah.
know how they play. And that the fact that they came through Salt Lake City tells me that there's probably something going on over there.
Mhm,
So I decided that I was going to surprise my guy and not even tell him that I was volunteering for an assignment to relocate. And what ended up happening is I didn't get the assignment to the air base. I got an assignment to the school, Brigham Young University, which is on the southern end.
mhm,
So he was on the north end of Utah. I was on the southern end, but we met in between in Salt Lake City,
yeah.
and we saw for ourselves. Yeah, they had a nice little thing going on. I got to see a few key DJs, Roger S, Benji Candelario, Master Kev from New York City, and then we also did our own thing, trying to curate some really urban type of styles, and then still taking kind of our perspective how we saw things in the UK. So it was really amazing. Our favorite watering hole was a real swanky spot called the W Lounge.
W Lounge.
Yes, that's what they called it. And again, it was real swanky, real small and intimate. And the coolest thing that happened was that there was a different event every Saturday throughout the month. Every first Saturday was an event, and then every second Saturday was something else, and then every third Saturday was something else. And it was pretty regular, so everybody knew exactly what to expect.
Yeah. Sounds very vibrant indeed, and must have
Yeah.
been great spot there. And that's amazing story that you told about Bobby and Steve, that
Yeah.
the UK connection came to you
Yes.
in one way. In one
Yes.
way. So, what happened after Utah?
So this is the best part of kind of how to wrap up my career, because up until this point, I'd stayed at every location about 4 or 5 years at a time. So I didn't really do a whole lot of moving around. I was able to get set and establish some things.
Yeah.
My last location was virtually at home.
Mhm.
I'm from Chicago. About an hour and a half away, there's Naval Station Great Lakes, the Navy base. That's where they have the basic training. But where I got stationed at was nowhere near that. It was somewhere else on another side, on the base property, and I lived an hour and a half away from there, or no, actually it was 45 minutes away from there,
Yeah.
in Wisconsin, in Kenosha.
All right.
That was the perfect place for me to be at because that was midway between Chicago and Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
And I can go back and forth and just kind of see what's going on. I did a few DJ gigs in Milwaukee and then slowly reintegrated myself back into Chicago.
Right.
So it was kind of like the perfect homecoming. Come
Yeah.
back to where I started the journey to begin with, and
Yeah.
still kind of continue on.
Like a full circle somehow.
Yeah.
Somehow like where. So now you are back, and thank you again, DJ Purple, for sharing on this journey and how exciting and interesting it has been, taking you in different places in the world and discovering the house in different spots and making your own mark there wherever you have been, which is absolutely beautiful. Now I'm gonna ask a little bit more about the influences, um, uh, your influences that affect your DJing. Who would you say are the artists, house music artists or DJs that have influenced you the most?
Hmm. So I think I can give I want to say about four people come to mind. In the beginning parts, when I first discovered WBMX, well, okay, actually, let me change my number to five now. A lot of different people here.
Okay.
I got to increase the number. When I first discovered WBMX, the first DJ that I heard was Mickey Mix and Oliver. And what was cool about him was his intros, the introductions to his mixes featured the legendary voice of Rodney Dangerfield. And I just thought that that was so interesting and creative to use a well-known voice in the comedy circuit to introduce a house music mix.
Yeah.
I just thought that was cool, and it just kind of got me thinking. Just be creative when I blend the records. Just simply blending records. Use creative stuff. In the DJ culture in Chicago, we always use drops anyway. There's a whole bunch of different drops. We have Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech was
Yeah.
very popular. The drop in the mix. You've got other a cappella vocals. In the beginning, there was Jack.
Yeah, true.
Rest in peace to Chuck Roberts, by the way. Had to pay him homage because he was the guy that was very popular
Mm,
with that vocal.
absolutely.
Other acapellas to different songs, drop them over the mix. So listening to Mickey kind of inspired me in that way.
Yeah.
There was another legendary college radio station, WKKC, and the influence of that was twofold. You had the college radio programming for the college students. And Walter Get Down Brown was one of my favorite DJs from that sector. He did this thing called the Roachbusters mix.
Mhm.
And all it was that it was house songs that were the vocals were sped up a little bit to sound like Alvin and the Chipmunks. But it was called Roachbusters. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's the same thing there.
Mhm.
And then they had another programming for high school DJs called Friday Night Network Connection.
All right.
And what it was that high school DJs were on the radio in the mix. So that just showed that, hey, if my peers can do this, eventually I can do the same thing. Now, we'll fast forward a little bit more.
Mhm.
Three guys out of Chicago that are my absolute favorites in the entire world. You have Terry Hunter,
Yeah.
and he's a favorite because of his soulful choices of songs. They resonate with me. There was stuff that I would actually pick up and buy and play in my sets.
True. Absolutely.
Ron Trent,
Mhm.
for much of the same reason, but just a different aesthetic because Ron Trent is more Afrocentric. He's really into the African beats And when I found out he was a percussionist, everything made sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Because you can hear it in his productions, all of his productions and the remixes, you can hear that African percussion type style, which gets me. I remember one time I heard him play an African or an Afro track. I lost all senses. Like I lost my mind completely. I was
Beautiful.
yelling,
You're feeling
screaming.
it. But
I didn't all of that, jumping up and down.
yeah,
I didn't care who saw me. I knew people were probably looking at me, and I didn't care.
it's okay. You do your thing. You enjoy the
Exactly.
music.
And then the third person who I had to add to my list recently, and it was I don't even know why I didn't add him before because I've seen him play in the '80s. Lil Lewis.
Hmm.
He has really been making like a strong statement as of late. He did a tour in Chicago last year, in which I did the same thing, how I described my reactions to Ron Trent. I
Hmm.
lost my mind to Lil Lewis as well. And then just a few weeks ago, he was in Chicago and he just murdered it. And the thing about him is that when he brings in certain hard tracks, it's not necessarily a lot of vocals to them, but just the way that the beat and the rhythm kind of come together
Yeah.
on a hyper extended sound system. Because it's like you get these tracks, and then he likes to play on really serious sound systems.
Yeah.
So everything just hits you, and you have no choice but to react. I
Yeah.
like to call it just surrendering.
So you surrender to the beat.
That's yeah, and he did it, and he did a successful thing in Defected Croatia recently.
Mhm.
I wasn't there, but I was happy for everybody that was there because I knew they were going to be in for a treat.
Yeah, yeah. For all of those, but oh, I wish one day I have to do that trip to Croatia. Everybody who's been there is always like so hyped about that. So
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Now, I'm gonna. Usually, I'm asking this question, but for you, after being 30 years in this DJing business, it might be, and probably is almost a mission impossible to name some of the favorite tracks of yours. So I'm gonna skip that because that's a huge, huge, huge area, and we would need maybe triple amount of this episode to cover
Oh,
that and that. But um, I'm gonna ask a following question about your radio DJ career. So you mentioned in your journey all the radio stuff that you have been doing and DJing. So tell us a little bit more, and what do you also currently do when it comes to the radio?
oh yeah. So radio was always something that I had a strong interest in ever since the '80s because radio was one of those things that just kind of grabbed my attention. I always had my head in the radio. My mom never let me go out to the clubs until I graduated high school.
Hmm.
So radio was my thing. I used to make this joke called club bed.
Yeah.
Let the couch out, have the speakers out, and lay back and listen to the radio in the bed.
Yes.
So, when I was at Florida, I had aspirations of doing a college radio show, but of course, since I relocated to the UK, that was put on hold for a long time. So I just basically settled for listening to stuff off the radio, recording the mixes. Got a slew of cassette tapes with all the different mixes from here in Chicago, also in the UK. But finally, when I got to Utah, I was able to connect with somebody and host my own internet radio show.
Yeah.
I called it Soul Revival and just did that thing for a number of years. Also got another radio show in Utah. It was called Prime Vector, where I would do other genres. So it'd be hip hop, R&B, neo soul, and all that kind of stuff. Also on the internet. And then finally, the third radio show that I had was called After Hours, and that was done in Salt Lake City.
All right.
So I stayed with that for a while, as long as I could. And then when I finally got back home to Chicago, I hooked up with a few other people and just kind of looked around and see what was going on. And I got a chance to do terrestrial radio
Mhm,
at legendary station WHPK
mhm.
for a little while. Moved from there and went to where I'm at now with WLUW, that's Loyola University. And I've been doing that for about 6 or 7 years now. I lost count. time time has been flying
Nice.
so fast. Time really flies. So that's the terrestrial part. But once again, it's amazing how these things go. I have to give a shout out to somebody that you recently interviewed. It's one of my turntable buddies.
All right.
He gave me a connection to hook up with somebody that was searching for a DJ, or they had open spots, I would say. Anybody else who wanted to kind of join the roster, they had open spots. And it's with London World Radio. The guy that you interviewed was TP Corleone.
Oh, yeah. Shout out
Because
to Chippy Corleone.
yes, he has a slot on LWR, London World Radio, and he was talking with the people over there and stuff, and again they're still trying to see if anybody else wants to get on the roster. He remembered how I always rave about the UK, especially London. So of course, when he asked me if I would be interested in joining the roster, that was a question that needed no answer.
Yes.
You already know the answer to this
Like,
one.
do you need to ask?
This is just easy. Asking was a formality. And the amazing thing about that was that all of that happened during the pandemic.
Mhm.
So my 4 year anniversary was just a few months ago. It was in May of 2020 when I joined the roster of London World Radio and just kind of roll with them ever since. So I basically have two radio shows that I that well actually one that I program is the LWR. The Loyola one is the one that I do live in studio. So that's unscripted. Everything is just I go in and I do my thing. And then I have a third show. Once again, here we go with the magic number three. I Beat the Stardust Radio is a monthly residency, and I just basically supply an hour-long mix. And for that show, I try to keep it kind of, I don't know, a summertime Mediterranean type of vibe.
Mhm.
I always think in the sunshine when I try to put those mixes together because it's Ibiza.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know your audience and you adjust the
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
absolutely that tells already how professional you are there, because those kind of things you know, with the experience and doing it, that you know. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's beautiful, and I have to say that Ibiza and that London, that UK connection is somehow it is part of your journey
It
very,
is.
very deeply, you know. So that's
Yeah.
very amazing. I'm very glad that you got to share on your story. Now, as you know, it's very snapshot kind of interview, and we don't have much time left. I'm starting to think that maybe we have to do another episode number 2 at some point. Who knows what's happening next? But if you could shortly share about your highlights so far. You already shared a lot here, but what would be your absolute highlights in your career if you think about your career as a DJ?
Well, I think the number one highlight for me, I kind of touched on it before, but I can expand just a little bit because I'll be able to revisit this. I talked about Garage City with Bobby and Steve. The funny thing about them is that how I first discovered that was in Newmarket when they, along with a few other guys as the resident DJs, it was Bobby and Steve was a resident, Chrissy T was another resident. They would come and visit at a club called Celebrities for the social intercourse parties and be guest DJs for that. And that's how I got exposed to their specific sound and it resonated. I was like, wow, these guys are amazing. The party was amazing anyway. Social intercourse was one of the best parties in all of England. And then eventually I made my way down to London to check them out on their home turf. And again, eventually began to open up a few times for the DJ Laboratory. The highlight about that, again, is that I get to revisit this in October. Shameless plug, but I've got to go there. It's all over my social media pages anyway. They're having a Garage City reunion party in October, and I'm actually on the bill along with a lot of my heroes, Bobby and Steve, particularly, CJ McIntosh, uh, Benji Candelario, all these greats from the 90s, and I get to revisit that all over again.
I
So,
am
yeah.
very happy that you shared that. So people stay tuned. And now, as a final quick question for those people who want to join in the party and hear you, whether live or radio stations or so on, where can they find you in social media?
So on my Facebook page, I actually use my real name, which I think that's a thing now. It's like, you use your real name? Yeah, I did. So you can catch me under Reginald L. Davenport on Facebook. But on Instagram, I do use a catchy handle, the Purple DJ, but it's spelled differently. THAPURPLEDEEJAY. So it's a real funky handle, the Purple DJ. You can catch me on Instagram that way.
Wonderful. So again, I thank you so much, DJ Purple, for this interview. Sending you lots of love straight from Helsinki, Finland, straight to Chicago. So yeah, house music all night long, and looking forward to hear more, and I'm definitely gonna tune into your radio shows and enjoy the party. And again, thank you. And let's see, maybe we'll have part two coming at sometimes in near future.
Yeah, I can probably do a follow-up after the party at the reunion party and whatnot.
Yeah, many stories.
Yeah, yes.
All right. So thank you again. And now we will continue to the mini mix, and bye bye from Helsinki, Finland. Stay well and blessed.
Imagine embarking on an unforgettable journey through the heart of Italy, where every turn is a new treasure and every moment is filled with beauty and culture. You start your adventure in Rome, the eternal city. Next, you venture into the rolling hills of Tuscany, where the air is perfumed with the scent of vineyards and olive grove. The journey continues to Venice, the floating city of canals and gondolas, after Five Earth and Milan. But your Italian adventure doesn't end on land. It's about to get even more extraordinary. A magical journey through Italy, topped off with a house music festival on Costa Cruise. Dance under the stars, relax in style, and discover exclusive performances on deck, all while sailing to some of the most beautiful destinations. There are 3 packages to choose from. Sailing dates are from September 24th through the 28th, 2025. Book yours now at festivaloncruise.com.